I'm baking, so that must mean it's Christmas, right?
Actually, if you can tell by the beautiful weather outside, it's just Thanksgiving. We made this video for AJ in the church in Honduras that they showed after their Thanksgiving, but you're now seeing it now. So Merry Christmas to you, Happy Thanksgiving to them, whatever. Just check out this Breachin. Hey, what up? I'm Pastor Mattie Ice. Have you met my wife, Victoria?
We love to go on adventures around the world.
And while we're adventuring, we like to take naps and eat snacks in caves, coves, and cafes.
When we're not doing that, we're raising money for clean running water projects.
Go on an adventure with us by hitting that subscribe button
as we eat snacks around the world.
Hey, what up, everyone? I am so excited that we get to have this special Breachin episode for people all over the world. Hey, I'm Pastor Matt, and with my wife Victoria and some other friends, we have a YouTube channel called Pastor Mattie Ice, where we show videos about traveling and being healthy here on our beautiful island of Saipan and around the world. Once a month, we have a special episode for a series we call Breachin. All it is I go take a Filipino blanket, a waterproof Bible, and go preach on the beach. And today's episode is a special one because it's specifically made for a church in Honduras during their social distance, quarantine, virtual church experience. But what's really cool is people from all over the world can also watch this special Breachin episode. So I'm going to go to two places here on the island of Saipan that do the same thing. And we're going to talk about a story in the book of Isaiah, chapter 40. The same thing is transitioning. See, in Honduras, they're going through transitions right now with staff changing and transitions, but the leadership and the focus of the church is still going forward in the same direction, following God. And so my friend AJ, the associate pastor there at the church, wanted me to talk about transitioning. And it's helpful because I'm videoing this the day after Thanksgiving, and it's like transitioning from one holiday to the next. And for those of you watching this on the Pastor Mattie Ice channel, it's right around Christmas, and you're like, okay, so what next? And it's like transitioning, and maybe if you're in the States, transitioning from warm to cold to warm, and you're getting the flu and you're getting sick because the weather doesn't know what to do. What are transitions? Some transitions are really good, and some transitions are really bad. And today I'm going to go to the two places on the island that are about transitions. Both of them are transitioning between streams and between currents, and you can see them come together, and that's why surfing and windsurfing is very popular at both of these locations. But not only is it physical transitioning, but also relational transitioning. Both of the places were very popular hundreds of years ago, whether it be for commerce, one over here, the Sugar King dock, and they take their product out. And another one is right off the coast, is this island called Managaha. And so there was a certain demographic of people on Managaha. They were like trapped on this tiny little island, and then they would transition over here in like a, 2-kilometer swim over to the main island of Saipan. Both of those talk about transition. So today we're going to look at Isaiah chapter 40, and obviously that is a seemingly bad transition. Isaiah was writing in a time of captivity. He's an 8th century writer, and these people, the Israelites, were focused on a certain direction, and they wanted to follow God, but they were confused, and they were trying to have a king, and So he's writing saying, hey, if you don't do that, bad things are going to happen. All right, I'm going to walk out to the beach. See you in a second. So most of the time on our Breachin series so far, we've gone to beaches where there aren't people. Either we go to beaches that are just secluded, or we go to beaches that just didn't have people on that particular day. But today, our two beaches are two of the most popular beaches here on the island of Saipan, and it's actually Thanksgiving. So there are a lot of people here. It's like as far as the eye can see, and you can just hear the noise, and you can hear the people while we were walking here. There's just music, and there are parties, and there's everyone. Now, I do want to put a little caveat, especially during this particular time of our history, that here on the island of Saipan, there have been no confirmed cases in like the past 2 or 3 months. So we all still take our precautions, wear our masks, stay 6 feet apart from strangers and such, but it's a little bit more lenient, and that's why on Thanksgiving there are just so many people here at the beach. What's really cool about this story in Isaiah chapter 40 is that it does talk about the transition of captivity, and Isaiah telling the Israelites about being in captivity and being locked up, but it also talks about a far greater time of transition, and it's one that we're preparing for as it's Thanksgiving going on into Christmas. The first few verses there, verse 3, it says, "A voice cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God." And that's specifically John the Baptist. Prepare a way. He is the preparer. I often talk and use the reference as John the Baptist is the light switch. And he's what turned on the light. And he's the one who said, okay, it's time for the light to come on. He's not actually the light. John the Baptist isn't. Jesus is the light. But that transition, and he's preparing the way, changing people's thoughts and perspectives of what they had gotten used to and accustomed to. He's saying, hey, I'm preparing a way for something else. But there's more to this passage that really relates to where we are, not just in two streams and two currents coming together and where they typically will ride their surfboards and such, but also you hear the noise, you hear what's going on, and there's celebration and there's excitement. And that's what I really started to learn when I first moved to the island of Saipan. I would be taking pictures of the storm coming in, and I had this cup that I was taking around all over the island, taking pictures of it to put together a book for Victoria. She hadn't moved over here yet, and so I was putting together this picture compilation in a book, and I would be taking pictures. I'd put the cup, and I'd watch the waves crash into it and just take the cup away. And I was like, it made me think, like, a lot of times there are storms going on, and there's going to be someone just taking a picture of the wave. And we might feel that we're totally ransacked, we're totally taken away. Maybe our people, if we're ministers, our people are totally ransacked. And it's like, what can we do? And we might be crying, we might be complaining, as this passage says. But there are other people who are outside of that. And that's just the way it's going to be. Because they're just aloof, or they're just away, or whatever. We're like totally in the middle and totally drawn in. And what are they doing? And is that a bad thing? Well, we just got out of what we call Napvember. If you want to check out the entire Napvember series, go to the Pastor Mattie Ice channel and check out Napvember. We did a lot of different videos talking about the importance of taking a nap. And there are 3 things that we do when we take a nap. We reflect, which means we look on our past. We relax, which means we just hang out right here in the moment. And we rest to prepare for the future. All 3 of those things: reflect, relax, and rest. And one of the stories I used often was Jesus on the boat when the waves are crashing in and his disciples are like, hey, Jesus, don't you care about this storm? And it says in the Mark version of the story that Jesus' head was on a cushion. Like, you just think, how aloof was he that he was taking a nap while it seemed like the rest of the boat was going to go down and the disciples were going to die. But that's what happens when we can stay chill. In a time of transition, in a time of storm, stay chill. We come out here and we watch them on their surfboards, and they're just coming in, and I'm like, I think I could do it. I like to skate when I was a little kid, but if you panic, you fall down. You have to stay chill and you have to relax while you're using that surfboard. And if you panic and you go crazy, whether you're on top of it or if you've fallen off, then it might not be the best situation. So you need to relax. All right, so that's our time here at the Sugar Dock Beach here near Sasupi, near the south side of the island. We're going to get more into the scripture in Isaiah chapter 40 when we travel a little bit. We're going to drive 5 miles up there, and that's when I'll see you at Micro Beach. Wait, you guys are here? We really thought that you would have, left. You have the opportunity at any time to click that X button. But we're so thankful that you have stuck around. Even though we had to walk back to our house and then get in the car and drive 5 miles up to here, you still stayed here. So thank you. I know it's just a quick little transition, but that's what we're going to talk about here, and the transition and quickness of it, and when we're out of control and in control. While we were at the Sugar Dock Beach, I used an acronym for November, which is reflect on your past, relax in your present, and rest to prepare for your future. I really like acronyms, and hopefully you do, and you can keep them locked away in there. And so here, we're going to use our rest of our time, about 10 minutes, to look at Isaiah chapter 40, which talks about comfort. And talk about 3 C's that come from the comfort. So the first C is control. And the second one is cry. And the last one is Christmas. So control, cry, and Christmas. That's what Isaiah 40 talks about. I'm not going to read all of it. If you want to, I encourage you to do so. And Isaiah 41 is good as well. A lot of that just really talks about times of transition. And regardless of what your transition is, if you're in Honduras at the church and you're experiencing staff transition, or maybe the ministerial focus transition because of the recent storms, we're all praying for you. That's so crazy during the time of your rainy season now. It's just so crazy, and you're in our thoughts and prayers. Or maybe you're somewhere else around the world and you're experiencing some type of transition. Whatever it is, Isaiah 40 really talks about it through those 3 C's, which again are control, cry, and Christmas. I want to look at the first one there in control. And the heading before verse 6 in Isaiah 40 says, "The word of God stands forever." That's what it talks. In verse 6 it says, "A voice says, cry, and I said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like a flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades. When the breath of the Lord blows on it, surely the people are grass." Talk about control. We don't even know how long we're going to be here for. We're like flowers and like grass, and they wither up in the sun, and like all of that. Talk about control that we don't even know. Talked about control when I was at Sugar Dock, and how the surfboards come in and the waves, and you can't control that. Talked about the desert in the first part of Isaiah chapter 40, where John the Baptist is preparing the way, and it says a voice from the wilderness comes out. And when the rains aren't coming, we can't control that. We can't control the storms. We can't control what goes on. We can't control. Today is Thanksgiving, and there are people all around, and the waters are full of heads, and behind you the smoke of barbecue is coming this way. And I think about the individuals who trekked from Europe over to America in a 66-day journey on the Mayflower. See, prior to that, these pilgrims were seeking religious freedom. If you're not familiar with the story, it's a crazy story. I simply found it on the History Channel as a refresher from my elementary days. But we find that these pilgrims were looking for religious freedom, and they found it in the Netherlands. But the Dutch did not give them economic freedom and relational freedom. The Dutch children had been influencing these pilgrim children to where the religious freedom that the pilgrims had sought did not look like it was going to go on to the next generation, because the Dutch children were influencing the pilgrim children. So they didn't have long-lasting religious freedom because of the lacking relational freedom. And they didn't have economic freedom at all. Their work was just really slavery, perhaps. So then some investing businessmen in the motherland said, hey, we can get these pilgrims to go over to this new land and start commercialization, start money making, start getting, and we can tell them that they can, evangelize to the Native Americans, that they can have other endeavors. We'll just send them over there. So that's what happened. The rich people bought the Mayflower, put the pilgrims on there, and then they had a 66-day journey. Talk about no control across the Atlantic. These individuals were trekking across a 66-day journey, and then they get there, and they didn't know if they were was going to be welcoming. They didn't know if they were going to be accepted. They didn't know if the people were going to be cordial, if the people were going to be okay with them being there. They didn't know if they were going to love it or hate it or what. I think about Managaha right there. Hundreds of years ago, there was a certain group of people who were there. And then the chief was like, we're going to go from there over to Saipan. And again, would there be a war? Would they be their slaves over here? What was going to happen? You get out of control in those times of transition. We begin to feel like the grass that we're just blowing wherever. We feel like we're on that surfboard and we're just, the waves taking us where it is. And maybe in our realistic physical storms right now in Honduras, you're like, I am out of control. The waters are taking things away from me. They're ripping my family apart because of jobs, because of lack of jobs, because they have to go live over here. They have to go live over here. Times of transition are tough because they take us out of control, which leads us to our second point in crying. Yes, crying. We just read it. A voice says, cry. And I said, what shall I cry? You don't even know what to cry. The grass withers, the flower fades. When the breath of the Lord blows on it, surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. We look back at verse 3. A voice cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. And this is John the Baptist preparing for Christmas, which, is coming. And for those of you watching this on YouTube for the Breachin series, it's here. During the Christmas season, there are lots of cries. Sadness is we've lost loved ones in the past, and that remembering. But what we want to look at, cries, comes in two versions. There's two versions of crying, and I say we can either hem or we can howl. And so there are two types of cries when we cry at the substance or cry at the moon, or we hem and we cry because of what God provides for us. And the Israelites throughout their wandering in the wilderness prior to getting to the promised land, which then they got kings and then the kings led them away, and then we're where we are here in Isaiah, in the 8th century. It's like, get ready for captivity and be taken away from your promised land. While they were wandering, the story is recounted in the Pentateuch there. While they were wandering, the people cried, and it was a negative cry. They weren't crying because they were saying, oh God, you're so great, like we see King David often do. They were crying because they're like, oh God, what did you do to me? Oh God, where did you take my security? Oh God, did you just bring me out here to die? That's a cry because you're crying about a substance. Oh, my food, where did my food go? Where did my happiness go? Where did whatever? And in a time of transition, we can often cry at the substance. My house is gone. And yes, it's a terrible thing. My job is gone. Yes, it's a terrible thing. My schoolwork is gone, or whatever transition you are in. Maybe you've been pursuing a job or pursuing a dream for so long, you're transitioning out of that. Maybe you've been pursuing a happiness at your church for a long time, and now that's seemingly gone, and you're crying because of that. But what we see is a voice cries out in the wilderness, pointing us back to Jesus. And that's what the cry needs to be. Is it a hymn or is it a howl? Are we howling at the moon and saying, like, what is going on? It's darkness and I can't see any lights. I'm looking for food, like the wolf who just woke up. Or are we hymning and saying, God, I know that it's difficult right now. I know that it's crazy. I know the transition is going on. I know that I don't have control, and I cry to you. So cry to the Creator instead of crying about the creation. That's the second point. And lastly, we talk about Christmas. We just read verse 3, a voice cries out, prepare a place for the Lord. I'm reading this and doing this today on Thanksgiving. And the tradition in many churches is Advent starts the Sunday after Christmas, and maybe for those of you in Honduras, you're celebrating Advent, and there's a certain candle being lit to prepare for Christmas. And I know that the Sundays are a little different, and some people celebrate, hope first, and some people joy first or peace first. But at SCS, I've been teaching the students, and we've been celebrating hope first, and then peace, and then love, and then lastly, joy. And hope is simply looking towards that future. And those four elements of Advent are the four things that Jesus brings. He brings hope, and he brings peace, and he brings love, and he is love, and he brings joy. And looking at that, and that's what Christmas should be bringing. And that's what they should have been doing. These Israelites should have been doing. They should have been looking for hope and peace and love and joy. But instead, the reason that they were being taken away into captivity is because they were not managing the transitions well. The transitions of the different kings there. And they're like, well, what's going on here? And they're not focusing on God. They're not focusing on the calmer of the storm, but they're focusing on the storm itself, and they're trying to trust themselves. And that's something I emphasize a lot to my students, is the difference between trusting ourselves and trusting God. So this Christmas season, as you know, maybe you're watching this for the first time around Christmas and you're like, oh shoot, I've already missed Advent. I missed all four of them. What am I supposed to do now? Well, you can pretend that you didn't, and even though it's the end of December, just be like, you know what, I'm going to celebrate those four things. I'm going to celebrate hope. I'm going to celebrate peace. I'm going to celebrate love. I'm going to celebrate joy. I'm going to celebrate a light in a dark place and hope. I'm going to celebrate the peace that passes all understanding, that you can't fathom it. I'm going to celebrate the love, that patience, that kindness, that who God is in his grace. I'm going to celebrate that joy of being content no matter what's going on. You can celebrate that now if today is your Thanksgiving or a couple days after Thanksgiving, or you can celebrate it if it's Christmas. The cool thing is we can celebrate it anytime. Maybe you're just stumbling upon or across this, months later. That's the cool thing about YouTube here on the Pastor Mattie Ice channel, is we have these playlists and you can just keep watching them, and you can find that hope, and you can find that peace, you can find that love, you can find that joy, because Jesus is here every day. So I want to read one last time, these first few verses. Comfort, this is in verse 1. Comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her that her warfare has ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins, and that a voice cries in the wilderness, prepare a place. In the desert, when it's so dry, when it's so barren, where you're like, where is the water? And maybe it's been raining nonstop for you. We just got out of rainy season here, and now it's just been dry. But even in those times when it's totally raining, that maybe you are spiritually having a dry and barren time, that nothing's being produced, that nothing's come forward, but you can pray and say, Jesus, come to my dry and barren desert wasteland of a ministry, or wasteland of a relationship, or wasteland or whatever. And you think, I don't know what's going on, and we try to control it, and we try to cry at the substance, and we try to manipulate Christmas how we want it. But our hope from Isaiah chapter 40 and that story of the Israelites being taken away into captivity is that we can see that control is only God's. That we can only cry to the one who controls. And that Christmas is all about Jesus and the transition that he brought coming in. And he's like, listen, the Israelites had it all messed up, and they thought that he was changing everything. And he's like, no, I'm bringing back to how it's supposed to be. And that's the transition. Look to Jesus. So it's our hope and our encouragement here for Micro Beach, when there are people all over, when there's boats all over, when the sun is beaming down. I can see this barbecue smoke just like rolling out. There's so many people around. Like what I said at the Sugar Dock Beach. Maybe you're in a time of transition that seems like you're getting ready to drown, but there are other people on the beach taking pictures, reminding us that we can get back to the beach. So whether you're on the beach or you're in the middle of this storm, it's our hope and our prayer for you today that you seek the control of God, you cry out to him, and you trust him this Christmas season. All right, take it back to the chapel. Like I said, a voice says cry. And I said, what shall I cry? Have you ever been there before? Maybe you're there right now. what shall I cry? Maybe you're the church in Honduras and you're like, what shall I cry? We're transitioning. We had someone who was special to us, who is transitioning ministry, the role, like, what shall I cry? And currently, as I'm preaching this, Honduras is having a natural disaster as well. So there's an added part of transition and ministerial focus, adjusting, and what shall I cry? Maybe for you around the world, somewhere else, you're having your own transition. And you say, what shall I cry? In Isaiah 40, as we talked about, the focus is all about crying to God. So it's our encouragement that you can do what we say on this channel, the Pastor Mattie Ice channel, is that you can stay chill and float on. That's our whole tagline on the Pastor Mattie Ice channel. Again, if you want to check out some of those videos, go over there. And if you're watching this on our channel, just hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and check out. We have so many videos about staying chill, about floating on. And it's simply keeping our eyes on Jesus and on our God who made heaven and earth. So that's our focus. It's not what shall I cry so much, but to whom shall I cry? All right, I can't wait to see you in our next episode, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's a special one for the church in Honduras. Maybe it's just the Breachin series or any of them between. I'm Pastor Mattie Ice.
I'm Victoria.
Wherever you are in the world, stay chill and float on.